Hello, I'm Mr. Shrum, and I am back with another anatomy physiology walkthrough. And we're looking at Unit 2, Section 1. And we're getting into the digestive system, the good stuff. Well, kind of the strange stuff, honestly. So let's actually take a look at the intro. The digestive system, there's a lot going on. Anytime we decide to eat something or drink something, there's a lot of moving parts. So it's clear that we need food to survive. However, the food we eat first needs to be prepared for cellular utilization. Cellular utilization means the nutrients from the food can be used in chemical reactions, such as to build or synthesize enzymes, cell division and growth, cell repair, and the production of energy. The principal function of this system is to prepare food for cellular utilization. This means food is mechanically and chemically reduced to forms that can be absorbed through the intestinal wall and transported by the blood to the cells. So those are the two things this system really focuses on, is either mechanically or chemically breaking down the food to a point it can be used, absorbed through the intestinal wall, and then the blood takes it to the cells. All right. And there's a bit of that in this diagram, but we'll get into more details later on. Anatomically and functionally, the digestive system is divided into a gastrointestinal tract, and then there's accessory digestive organs that help in a way. But the gastrointestinal tract is one long sac that extends from the mouth to the anus. Another word is the GI tract or the alimentary canal. Each structure of the GI tract has specific functions in breaking down the food and preparing it for cellular utilization. It usually requires about 24 hours for food to travel the length of the GI tract. My mother actually works in a doctor's office that focuses on gastrointestinal, gastroenterology, GI doctors, that's what they call them. And it's a very important part of your body. And if things go wrong, well, you'll need to go to a GI doctor. But the structures of the tract include our oral cavity, the mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. And you can see those in this diagram. Some of them have different names. There you go. The accessory digestive organs include teeth, tongue, salivary glands, liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. The digestive organs of the abdominal cavity are not firmly enclosed in solid tissue. They're supported and covered by serous membranes. Serous. Now, the serous membranes of the abdominal cavity are called peritoneal membranes. Now, there are two types of these. They're parietal. Peritoneum lines the wall of the abdominal cavity. while the visceral peritoneum lines the outer surface of the abdominal organs. Now, the space between the parietal and visceral portions of the peritoneal membranes is known as the peritoneal cavity. So on the inside, we have the parietal. On the outside, we have visceral. And then in between, we have that cavity, peritoneal cavity. The parietal peritoneum forms a sac that contains the following abdominal and pelvic organs: the stomach, liver, spleen, pancreas, tail end of the pancreas, intestines, and reproductive organs. You can see that here. Abdominal organs that are not within the parietal peritoneum include the kidneys, the gallbladder, and the pancreas besides the tail. So the tail is, but the rest of it is not. Now, along the posterior aspect of the cavity in your abdomen, the parietal peritoneum comes together to form a double layered fold called the mesentery. The mesentery serves as an anchor for the GI tract. And you can see that outlined in red. There are 3 extensions of the parietal peritoneum that function to provide support to the abdominal organs. It also stores fat, cushions the abdominal organs, support lymph nodes, and protects against the spread of infection. The 3 extensions of the parietal peritoneum are the falciform ligament, the lesser omentum, and the greater omentum. So the GI tract actually has 4 layers: the mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, and the serosa. Mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, serosa. The mucosa is the innermost layer of the GI tract. It's absorptive, and secretory, which makes it the true functional layer of the GI tract. So it absorbs and it secretes. That's what those words mean. It contains smooth muscles, connective tissues, lymph nodes, and mucus secreting cells. And that mucus makes it easier for things to travel through the tract. Now, above that layer is the submucosa. It's relatively thick, and it contains blood vessels, connective tissues, lymph vessels, glands, and nerve plexuses. So this is the layer right above the mucosa. And above the submucosa is the muscularis. Now that layer is responsible for pushing the food through the GI tract. And this happens by contracting in a wave-like motion. And this motion, this movement, is known as peristalsis. So muscles gradually move things along in the tract. So the layer contains smooth muscles and nerve plexuses. The digestive system is important because it takes the food you eat and makes it usable to the cells inside your body. Now, the outermost layer, the serosa, actually contains that visceral peritoneum, and that's a part of this layer. The organs of the digestive system are divided into the Gastrointestinal Tract, or the GI tract, and the accessory digestive organs. Here's all the structures of the GI tract. Starts with the mouth, down through the pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. That's all the GI tract. And then the organs that help are the teeth, the tongue, salivary glands, liver, and the gallbladder. And we'll learn more about that in the next lesson. That was the intro. And then this one, we'll look at the GI tract on its own. Let's zoom in first. The GI tract is one long sac, remember from what we discussed earlier. Just one long sac from mouth to the anus. It's all one long trip. And it requires about 24 hours for food to travel this whole GI tract. Here are the structures, like we said before. Now we're going to look at the structures individually. The oral cavity is where food enters the GI tract. It is also known as the mouth or the buccal cavity. The oral cavity contains a few accessory digestive organs that will be discussed in the next lesson. The oral cavity is formed by cheeks, lips, hard and soft palates. Here's a decent picture. Now the cheeks consist of skin, subcutaneous fat, and facial muscles that form the lateral walls of the oral cavity. Lips are fleshy, mobile organs formed by the orbicularis oris muscle, connective tissue, and skin. So I think we're all familiar with lips and cheeks. Now, looking at the palates. The palate is the roof of the oral cavity, and that is formed by hard and soft palates. So it shows you the top of your mouth where the hard palate is versus the soft palate. Harder towards the front, if you can touch it with your tongue right now, like I am. And then it's a little softer in the back. The hard palate is the anterior portion of the roof of the oral cavity. It's formed by palatine process of the maxillae, palatine bones, and a cover of mucous membranes. That's all at the roof of your mouth. Now, the soft palate is a muscular arch on the posterior portion, that back portion of the roof of your mouth. It's covered by a mucous membrane as well. Suspended from the middle lower border is the uvula, that little dangling member at the back of your mouth is called the uvula. The soft palate and the uvula move upwards during swallowing to keep food from entering the respiratory tract. So it's all there to prevent food from entering the wrong tract. You don't want things getting into your respiratory tract. That's for air. Food is not air, so it does not go in there. Next up is the spharynx, also known as the throat. So these are just scientific words for things you're already familiar with. Oral cavity equals the mouth. Spharynx equals the throat. It connects the nasal and oral cavities and provides passage for both air and food. The spharynx sends air to the trachea and food to the esophagus. Air to the trachea, food to the esophagus. The esophagus is the tube that connects the spharynx, or the throat, to the stomach. The esophagus is posterior to the trachea. It's lined with ring-like muscles that can help push the food all the way to the stomach. Or towards the stomach, at least. The esophagus has two muscular sphincters. There's the upper esophageal sphincter at the very beginning, and then the lower esophageal sphincter at the end of the esophagus, which prevents food from the stomach re-entering the esophagus. So it can't go, well, it tries to prevent things going the other way. And your stomach is a bean-shaped muscular organ that connects the esophagus with the small intestine. It's mainly a holding tank. So the stuff just kind of hangs out here until it's ready to move on. It's like a pit stop for your food. The stomach has the same 4 layers as found in the GI tract, but with a little bit of modification, a little different stuff going on. The mucosa layer has numerous folds called gastric rugae. This allows the stomach to stretch. So as it's filled, the stomach gets bigger. The mucosal layer also contains gastric glands, which produce substances that aid in breaking down food. So stomach acid, gastric glands, that helps break down food. There are 4 regions to the stomach. The cardia, which is this narrow upper region right below the lower esophageal sphincter. So right there. The fundus, the dome-shaped portion right there by the cardia. The body, the central portion, and the pylorus. The funnel-shaped terminal end. So this funnel-shaped part of the stomach is called the pylorus. In between the pylorus and the small intestine is the Polaric Sphincter, which regulates the exit of gastric contents. The small intestine is the organ that connects the stomach with the large intestine. This is where most of the absorption takes place. Absorption is when the nutrients pass through the blood vessels in the small intestine and then are dispersed to cells throughout the body. You can see the small intestine right here and the mucosa, submucosa muscularis, layers to it. Now, the small intestine consists of 3 parts: duodenum, jejunum, and ilium. jejunum. Interesting names. But the first portion of the small intestine is about 10 inches long. Duodenum. The second portion of the small intestine is about 3 feet long. So we have 10 inches, duodenum. The jejunum, it is about 3 feet long. And this is where the absorption occurs mostly. And then the ilium is the final portion of the small intestine. And that's about 6 to 7 feet long. So it gets longer through each portion, 10 inches to 3 feet to 6 to 7 feet, all wrapped up in the small intestine. And there are many finger-like projections called villi that line the inner surface of the small intestine. These villi and microvilli are close to blood and lymph vessels, allowing for easy transport of nutrients from the intestines into the blood, where they can be carried to individual cells throughout the body. The large intestine is the organ between the small intestine and the anus, and is the final portion of the digestive tract. It is named large because its diameter is larger than that of the small intestine. It's about 5 feet long, and the function of this intestine is to form, store, and expel feces from the body. So a very important intestine for sure. Here are the regions. Colon and rectum, I'm sure you've heard of before, and the cecum. Cecum is new, I'm sure, to you. And that's a pouch that hangs inferiorly to where the large intestine connects to the small intestine. A worm-like projection called the vermiform appendix is attached to the inferior medial portion of the cecum. The appendix is composed of lymphatic tissue, which may serve to resist infection. The colon consists of 4 regions: ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, and sigmoid colon. Now, the ascending colon extends superiorly and then along the right abdominal wall. Transverse colon horizontally crosses the upper abdominal cavity. So ascending goes up, transverse across, and then descending goes down, descends inferiorly along the left abdominal wall to the pelvic region. And then the sigmoid colon is this S-shaped bend, which leads to the rectum. And the rectum is the last 7.5 inches of the GI tract. The last portion of the rectum is referred to as the anal canal. Anal canal, canal. The external opening of the anal canal is the anus. And muscle sphincters guard the anal opening. So sphincters guard against things moving the other way. Remember that. So to review the structures of the GI tract, starts with the mouth, down through the throat, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. And we'll get into the accessory digestive organs next time. So see you then, and I hope this was helpful. See you later.